Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I hope you're doing fantastic today. If you're watching this, you can see my hair is still a little wet. I just got out of the shower because I just got back from a run. And one of the things you might be like me is that there's certain activities or certain things that you do that kind of, for lack of a better word, it's when ideas come to you or thoughts, right? So one of the things we know about walking and running and stuff like that is that a lot of people, when they're doing that, it's like the mind goes like, when I'm just kind of doing this, like I'm opening up my arms, like the mind opens up. And I'm kind of open for business when I run or I walk. It's like I'm just like, okay, ideas, okay, spiritual team, feel free to upload whatever you want me to know or whatever. So I was out on my run. And of course, before that, it feels like every single day. I'm just, first of all, hi, I'm just diving right into this. But it just seems like every single day we're being bombarded with more and more acts of violence and atrocities and murder and mayhem and just people just losing their damn minds, you know what I mean? And while I was thinking about this, I mean, I think it was this morning that somebody in, I think it was Michigan, basically went into a church, a Mormon church, and was like an LDS church or whatever, and was opening fire and then set it on, literally like shooting, of course, more gun violence. Hello, America. And then it was also set the building on fire. And I was just thinking to myself, so while I was running, all of a sudden I heard this phrase in my head. And I said, man, I'm like, fucking people are out here turning their feelings into felonies. And that just kind of stuck with me, right? Turning their feelings into felonies. And that's kind of what I want to talk a little bit about today. And I want to make a clear distinction, right? I mean, pretty much most of us, okay, most of us are not out there setting buildings on fire or shooting people with our guns and murdering people and harming other people and stuff like that, right? Those are like the extremes. So it can be really easy to disassociate ourselves from that stuff and say, well, I would never do that, or I don't do that. Like I'm not murdering people or attacking people or whatever. But in A Course in Miracles, we kind of talk about it like this. Like anytime we're not really having like loving thoughts about our fellow brothers and sisters, our fellow brethren, right? Our family members, your sweeties, your siblings, your co-workers, whatever, right? People on the left, people on the right, the others, like all the shit that we do to anybody who's outside of you, basically. Right? When you're not having loving thoughts about them, it's just like having attack thoughts or murderous thoughts, like in your head, right? Where we make them guilty, we make them bad, right? We basically lose our own peace of mind because we're attacking others all the time and blaming them, whether it's for our own feelings or the state of the world or whatever. And so I started to think about this, how it can be really easy to see these people who take extreme measures and do heinous acts and say like, oh my God, like I don't do that though. I'm not turning, KK, I'm not turning my feelings into felonies. You might not be turning them into felonies, but we all do this thing where we let our feelings, if we do not know how to emotionally regulate ourselves, we let our feelings treat us like little puppets. We let our feelings be these little dictators that boss us around and quote unquote make us, I'm doing little air quotes, make us feel things or make us think things or make us do things. And then we're just like, yeah, I don't know what happened. So I want to talk a little bit about this so that our feelings don't turn into felonies, so that we learn how to kind of just like become a little more emotionally regulated. And we can't do that unless we kind of talk about like what is emotional regulation. And so you can Google it, but I'll just save you the problem because I've Googled it, a gazillion times over the years, like whenever I'm trying to learn something really well. And I'll just put it like this. So emotional regulation is said to be, it's a term that we use to genuinely describe a person's ability to effectively like manage their emotions or to respond to when they're having an emotional experience. So, for example, something happens in your life Maybe it's something unexpected. Maybe it's something big. Maybe it's something traumatic, but maybe it's something small. And what is your ability to respond and to effectively manage how you're responding when you're having an emotional experience? And we can think of it easily as like when people talk about, like, oh, I got triggered, right? Oh, they pushed my button, I got triggered, right? So you're having a response, right, to an emotional experience. And you're just like, oh my God, like I snapped, or I just like lost my patience or whatever. So when people are doing these really horrific things, a lot of times it's because they're ruminating long term, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we also can hold on to our gripes and our grievances and our grudges, and we can ruminate on things too. But sometimes we're just so woundly tied, like we're like wound really tight because we stay in a space of chronic stress or chronic overwhelm, or we don't really know how to feel our emotions, right? We're not everybody is super emotionally intelligent. Not a lot of people. And I ask this all the time in the nest, and I ask this with my clients and people that I know, like, whoever sat your ass down and was like, hey, this is what you do when a big emotion comes up. This is how you feel your feelings. I don't know about you, but Gen X kids, nobody was teaching us how to do that shit, right? We had to figure it out the hard way. We had to go and read some books on our own. We had to get our ass in trouble to figure out, like, oh yeah, maybe that wasn't a good response to that. Maybe there was a better way for me to kind of respond to whatever was going on, what that person said, what that person did. Okay. So here's the thing. Can you effectively manage and respond to your own emotions or an emotional experience or something that is coming up? Okay. And so there's healthy coping mechanisms for when you have like some stress come up or a feeling come up or a big emotion come up. And I just mentioned one of them. I said, oh, I was out for a walk. I was out for a run. Walking and running is so good, first of all, for your brain. It's so good for your nervous system and just exercise in general. But it's doing more than just working out your muscles. It's giving you an opportunity to shift your perspective, to broaden out your perspective, especially when you go out into like nature, that very calming and grounding energy, to get some sunlight in your eyes, to get some fresh air, right? To move your body, to calm your brain, to calm your nervous system, and to, be able to shift out of just foveal vision of like just staring, like focusing on your screen or your phone. And then if you're watching this, you can see I'm bringing my hands in close to my eyes. I'm like limiting my peripheral vision, right? I'm making it very focused. And then when you go outside and out into nature or out into the sun or out into the world, and it's like, and it just like opens up. So we literally get a shift in how we're visualizing, a shift kind of in how we're feeling. And most people not only don't know what they're feeling, they don't know why they're reacting the way that they're reacting, right? They have a subconscious thing going on. So one of the biggest first things for me, I can't say what the therapists are going to say, but one of the biggest first things for me is I have to be aware first and foremost that I'm having some sort of a response or a reaction, right? If we're not self-aware enough, if we don't slow down enough in our life consistently to be able to get a grip and a handle, to be able to see ourselves clearly and how we respond to the world and to the people around us and to certain situations, if we're not self-aware because we're always just staying wicked busy and distracting ourselves and not trying to feel things or think about things or go deep, if we're just like floating around and not even floating around, maybe we're just like just always staying busy or always like fucking on our phones or always distracting and not wanting to feel things, how are we ever going to know when we're in it? Because if we don't, then we just normalize it. We just normalize our being cranky or being short with people or being passive aggressive or being whatever. And we start to tell ourselves a story like, oh, that's just how I am. No, 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 no. So number one is I should go back even more than be self-aware. You got to slow down. That's how self-awareness is actually going to happen first and foremost. You hear me talk about it all the time. And it's one of the first things that I tell my clients is, we got to learn how to like dial things down a little bit. We need to slow down. Slow down your breathing, slow down your thinking, slow down your body a little bit. That doesn't mean that you can't have times when you're moving fast and you're in a groove and you're doing shit, but we have to step out of the normal pace of the world that just drives so much fear and separation and division and consumption and competitiveness and otherness. We got to slow down and kind of step out of that river of like always moving, 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 moving. You know what I mean? Even the tides, like even the ocean has tides where it rolls in and then it rolls out. You know what I'm saying? There are shifts and we need the shift. We need to be able to downshift and slow down so we can take a good gander, so we can take a look around, so that we can sit with the feeling, so we can recognize that we're having a thought that is not going to end well if we insist on staying with that train of thinking. And if you're feeling what I'm saying, like double amen hands if you get it, right? And if you're somebody who is like a shock and you're like, oh, if I stop, I'm going to die, right? Like, no, no, no. If you don't stop, you're going to die probably faster. So here's the thing. Number one, we got to slow down. We got to be willing to take a look at ourselves and recognize, hey, I'm kind of a little short with people lately. I'm feeling a little stressed out of my mind. I'm finding myself more anxious. I'm whatever. So we got to be self-aware. We got to know yourself, right? You got to know yourself and you got to understand what kind of emotions often come up for you. How can I recognize when I'm feeling a particular thing? So many people, and whether it's due to trauma or the pace of life, or they weren't taught, or 1,000 other reasons, they don't even know what they're thinking and feeling half the time. I've seen it time and time again as a yoga teacher over 25 years, right? And you say to somebody, well, can you feel that? And they kind of look at you. Where can you feel that? How does it feel? Like when I ask these questions in class, for some people, you can see it's really hard for them, right? That interoception, that like internal experience for them to be able to report it back, right? It doesn't come naturally to everybody. And this isn't making fun of anybody that might struggle with that or find it hard, but it is an invitation to get curious about it, to really kind of notice your internal experience so that you can notice the kinds of things or people or places or things that like do evoke, right? That are evocative, that do evoke like big feelings in you, or what, like people or places or smells or whatever that make you feel, or that happen, and then you feel anxious or scared or worried or overwhelmed. Or some places and people, spaces might be happy places. They might calm you right down. They might feel really welcoming and inclusive and grounding, and you feel seen and loved and heard and all that stuff, right? All that good stuff. But if we don't learn how to deal with our emotions, and if we don't, first of all, we got to slow down, then you got to be aware, and then you got to be willing, right? You got to be willing to feel some things and to take a look at some things, because a lot of people are emotionally dysregulated and they don't know it. So if emotional regulation is our ability to effectively manage our emotions and to be able to respond in what I would call a healthy way or a sane way to an emotional experience, emotional dysregulation is when we have an inability to use like good or healthy strategies or responses. If we don't know how to diffuse like negative emotions, like everyday things, moderate things, not even extreme things, right? If we're not able to moderate everyday emotions or diffuse them or dissolve them, as I like to say, right? A lot of times people are like, oh, I have this problem like I have to solve. And I'm like, well, it's more about dissolving it, right? It's more about like dissolving it, removing it so much as I need to fix it, right? So when we have emotional dysregulation, we do not have the ability to put healthy strategies into place. And instead, a lot of times we just go like really big. You'll start to feel like intense emotions or overwhelming emotions or negative emotions, and they just feel big and unmanageable. Like literally, think about that. And these things, when you have a big emotion consistently over time and you have no support. Now, of course, granted, sometimes there is mental health issues at play. We see it time and time again in mass shootings and people who use guns for violence against people and just walk into a random place and just start murdering strangers, right? It's fucking awful. It's horrifying. And these are people sometimes, yes, that needed mental health intervention. They needed mental health care. But we also just have a lot of people who don't know how to manage their emotions. They haven't gone to therapy. They're not even aware that the way that they think is not like right or healthy or good or helpful to them or to obviously others, right? And if we're not able to use emotional regulation strategies, if they're not taught to us, or if we don't self recognize, I have a problem, right? I am wound really tight. I'm very reactive. I get angry really easy. I have no patience. I am like, 0 to 60. When they say that, I can go from 0 to 60 really fast with anger or reaction or whatever. This defensiveness, this attacking, right? It's not really helpful. It's not really healthy. We all know this. But what happens is, and this is one of the things we don't often talk about, is that the experience of emotions is not bad. It is simply human. We are human being. We have receptors in our bodies, right? We have pain receptors. We can feel temperature, whatever. We are sensory creatures. We can kind of clock our environment, right? Like we feel things. Emotions are not per se bad things. They're just part of the human experience. And sometimes the emotion is going to be a joyous emotion, a happy emotion, a feel good, quote unquote, feel good emotion, right? We feel loved, we feel accepted, we feel valuable, we feel seen, we feel heard, we feel like we matter, we feel whatever, patient, peaceful, calm, curious, compassionate, all these things, right? Beautiful, great. But sometimes we have emotions and we label them as like bad, anger, fear, guilt, shame, blame, attack, jealousy, envy, all the things, right? And sometimes if we don't know how to regulate when those emotions like show up in the body, show up in our mind, when we have a visceral reaction in the body, and then we have this thought system like going on in our head of fear, which, just makes everything feel bigger. It exacerbates everything. So a lot of times what it is it's not the emotion itself, and it's not even the thought itself. It's the interpretation that we give to the emotion, even labeling it like good or bad. I don't think anger is a bad emotion. I think it's just part of the kaleidoscope and if you look at like a color wheel, I just think like, oh yeah, like anger is on this color wheel. It is available to me. It lives inside of me. And some people see it as bad. To me, anger isn't bad unless you start inflicting your inability to cope or deal with or manage your own anger onto others, human, animal, the planet, etc. Yourself, right? That's where self-harm and self-injury comes in. People get all these feelings, they don't know what to do with them, and they don't want to inflict them on other people, but they inflict them on themselves. And that's where we see things like cutting and self-harm and addiction and abuse of alcohol and abuse of drugs and like 1,000 other ways that we can harm ourselves. You know what I mean? And so we have these emotional cycles that happen that aren't very loving and aren't always very kind. And they're sometimes called like a vicious emotional cycle. And the thing is like when we have emotions that we don't know how to regulate, we start to have thoughts about them. We start to tell stories, right? We interpret what we think they mean, and we start to tell these stories, and we start to get these beliefs, and we start to have these thoughts. We ruminate on the thoughts, the language, the words, the self-speak, the way we talk to ourselves. And it's those things that then create behavior. So sometimes we get a feeling or we get a thought and then a feeling. And if we ruminate on these things, if we have no way to break the pattern of these thoughts, these emotions, and our response to them, they can often lead to behaviors where we act out. And there's this little kind of like cycle wheel that I've seen before. I'll just break it down for you how they say that these things kind of like go down. And one example that they give is like, let's say that just to set it in context. So let's say you have a friend, let's call it whether you're in high school or it's work. So just imagine for a younger kid, it could be school, and for an adult, it could be work. And you have a friend. And I saw this on Cornell Research. They kind of broke this down. That's where I'm getting this particular thing from. So And they say, okay, so you have a friend and they walk by you in the hallway and they don't acknowledge you. And immediately what happens is you start to have like a rapid fire set of thoughts and feelings. And it might be like you feel confused or you feel disappointed or you feel angry. Like, why are they dissing me? Like, why aren't they paying attention to me? Like, what did I do wrong? Or are they mad at me because of this thing I did or didn't do from a few weeks ago? Right? I'm sure it's nothing. I'm sure I'm just being oversensitive, but like maybe she's in a hurry, but still, right? And all it takes is one person just walking past you, and then all of a sudden we're off and running, right? The brain is off and running. The emotions come up in the body. Maybe we feel embarrassed. We feel a little ashamed. Like, what? They didn't see me. Like, what's that about? We start to write a story. We start to get pissed off. And there's this initial kind of like flood of feelings. And it's like one after another, like a bizarre little parade, right? A bizarre, and of course, in Miracles is that great line, right? And if you can just sit back and watch it like a parade, like not take it personally, just notice. And this is where it goes back to step one, slow down. Step two, self-aware, be aware. And if you're able to just pull back and notice this bizarre little parade of thoughts that like floats on by, and you don't get hooked by them, you don't get triggered by them, you don't feel like you have to do anything, you just notice like, wow, look at my brain doing that thing. Like, right? Like look at my kooky monkey's brain like doing that thing and writing all these stories when I don't even know. Because I haven't even talked to my friend. I don't even know if they saw me. Why am I assuming the worst, right? Why am I assuming the worst of my friend? What if something did go down? We'll just have a conversation about it or whatever, right? And what happens is, though, we start to have these thoughts and these feelings, and then we feel like we got to do something about them. Well, I'm going to text them and I'm going to be like, that was rude, or I'm going to like da 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 da. Well, the action only comes from this place of feeling like that, like, again, you get these thoughts. So again, your feelings, your thoughts, and your behaviors, your actions, they're all connected. And if we don't have ways of interrupting the pattern when we're dysregulated, we might do some shit that we're going to regret. And we can see how, and again, I'm not inside the minds of mass shooters and stuff like that. But most people, that's not like a one thing happens and they snap. Usually it's something that has been building up and building up and building up. And whether that is a thought system of hate or whether that's an incident where they got like, I think I go back to like when, people talk about quote unquote, that phrase of like going postal, because the big thing, like when the guy did a mass shooting at like, at a post office or whatever. And that's where that whole going postal like came from, right? And it's like, so who knows if it's just an incident that like finally like snaps somebody. But usually my understanding is it's like something that has been built up over time. And whether that's an ideology or somebody got radicalized or somebody was bullied or somebody, again, has mental illness issues. But a piece in all of this is that there's the inability to emotionally regulate, right? So here's the pattern that they talk about it like this. So number one, there's a situation. And this is where the trigger happens. And whether it triggers a problem, like you're criticized at work, or again, somebody walks past you in the hallway and snubs you or ignores you or whatever the thing is, there's a trigger. And the situation, quote unquote, the situation / the trigger, it then now goes to your thoughts. Okay. And it's like, so what's going through my head? What are the words I'm using? What's the language I'm using? What is the self-talk? This is me kind of building off it, right? Like, so what are the kind of things are you thinking to yourself? And it might be, oh, that person's an asshole, but it might also be, I must not be good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. There's something wrong with me. It's all my fault. I'm bad. I'm wrong. I'm not loved, et cetera, right? And then this, obviously, now there are different schools of thought. Some people will say the body speaks first. The body has the emotion and then it sends a thought up. Other people think it's from the top down. The thought goes first. And I'm just telling you what this model says. So you have the situation, the trigger, something happens. Then you have a thought about it, right? The self-talk, the language you use, whatever. And then you have your emotions. And this is like, well, how do I feel? And then this is when I start to go, well, how do I feel? Do I feel anxious? Do I feel scared? Am I angry? Am I pissed? Do I feel worthless? Do I feel exhausted? Like, what's going on? Like, how do I feel? And those feelings, how I feel, and that's what this whole episode is about, often will be, how do I react? What am I going to do about it? Am I going to create a problem? Am I going to isolate myself? Am I going to avoid contact with other people? Am I going to become aggressive? Am I going to go pick up a gun? Am I going to X, Y, and Z, right? And this place between the emotion, right? Being able to like have a feeling and not feel like you need to do anything about it. Can I regulate my nervous system? Can I sit with myself? Can I kind of talk to myself and shift my perspective, right? So then you have the, how do I react, my behavior? What do I do? And then what you do, the next step is what I call, they call it my body's physical reactions. Like after I do something about it, how do I feel? Do I feel tired? Do I have a loss of appetite? I call this step how that feels. It's the reaction to my reaction. So I went and did this thing and now I feel guilty and now I feel bad. And now I'm in this victim loop of like, oh my God, now this is going to happen. And I start to get anxious. I start to get scared. I start to beat myself up. I double down and make them twice as wrong. See what you made me do, quote unquote. Nobody makes you feel or do anything. If more people knew this, we'd be in a totally different world. But then we start to blame the other people, right? And then we go to right back around to how I continue to think about this situation, that other person, and myself. So that loop comes right back to my thoughts about it. And then if you don't have a way to do something about this little circle of hell that you're kind of putting yourself in, we've got to be able to pause. We've got to be, I'm doing a little timeout with my hands. We've got to be able to hit timeout. We got to be able to, like when Viktor Frankl, right? Man's search for meaning. When Viktor Frankl talks about in between the stimulus and response, there's a space, there's this moment, right? And if you don't know how to hit pause and take a deep breath or to slow down your thinking or pump the brakes, this is how we end up doing shit that we regret. This is how we end up doing shit and saying things we can't take back. This is how people end up in prison, because they have no emotional regulation and they turn their feelings into felonies. Well, I'll show you. I'll get you. I'll do this. Just you wait. And this becomes really deeply patterned over time. And unless something changes to shift the cycle, it's like you just keep getting into this cycle. And it says here, it's easy to see how even a small event can cascade into something hugely, hugely triggering. So then if you take a person, right? If you take a person who has experienced a lot of trauma as a child, a lot of drama, just basically cruised on in life. And I don't mean cruise like it was easy, but just kind of operated in the world all on trauma responses, like literally just surviving, holding on. I'm like white knuckling it right now. Like just think of a guy like doing some. Think about the people who like climb. This is what I kind of think about emotionally. You know, the climbers who climb without clipping in, without ropes, and they're on these really fucking like steep cliffs. And they find the tiniest little edge to hold on to, the tiniest little grip with their fingers. I'm kind of doing this thing with my hands right now. Like they're gripping this wall of granite, and the slightest little thing can be disaster. It can end in disaster. Well, if we've been white knuckling it our whole time and just holding on by those fingertips, it does not take much to knock us off. And at some point, those old strategies that kept us alive and kept us safe, those old ways of being, those patterns, those conditioning, the things, the habits, the things that, again, were put in place to protect us and to allow us to survive sometimes some hellscapes, some really terrible things. They stop working at some point. And I always say, like, I don't beat up my younger self anymore. You know, I used to look back and be like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, what was that all about? You know, I used to really be unkind to the younger version of myself. And now I have like a really deep appreciation that those younger parts of me, man, they were really doing the best they could with what they had, you know. And God bless Vicky with 2Ks from Lawrence. She was a little bit of a knucklehead, but I'm also really, really proud of the fact that she held on, she didn't give up, and she might have not always made great choices. But here we are, you know what I mean? And it took all that to get me here. So I'm grateful for it. But it's really important that we learn to understand and work with our own relationship to our thoughts, our feelings, and our behavior. And this is why, like, a lot of people end up going to therapy, right? To talk some things out. But CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it doesn't work for everybody. Some people need to do more than talk. And some people just get tired of talking about the same thing again and again and again. Some people need more somatic work. They need to kind of get into their body. Some people need more kind of like visceral, like techniques and tools that help them to interrupt their brain and their pattern. When the brain starts to go down that pattern highway, right? When the brain starts to do its little dance that it's done 1,000 times. And people who are like, for example, I've talked about this before, people who are quick to anger, right? When people say, oh, he goes from 0 to 60, that's a person that's practiced being angry. People who are anxious, you've spent a lot of time practicing being anxious. I'm not saying you're doing it consciously. Hello, me too, double amen hands, like I get it, right? People who are nervous, people who overthink, people fill in the blank, whatever your particular pattern is, right? We all have our patterns and our conditioning, and we all can now find ways and have access to tools that help us to break that pattern. And we need to, first of all, again, really take a look at the way that we're responding to the people, to the, whether it's the news or social media or the internet or your family or your partner, your sweetie, your friends, your siblings, whatever, the world that you have created. There's the external world that we're all kind of moving around in. And then we have this internal world. And it's the internal world that you actually can do something about. We can't often change what's happening out there. But in here, the emotional response network, as I like to call it sometimes, like, how am I going to respond to this? And we have to, first of all, we got to know ourselves. We got to talk to ourselves. We got to ask ourselves some kinds of questions, right? And we got to know things like what emotions are really hard for me to navigate, right? What feelings really trigger me? What behaviors do I do to usually calm down big feelings, right? Like, we got to get to know ourselves and ask ourselves these things, right? What are the some of the strategies I use short term to just like boom, pattern interrupt? And there are things that are literally called pattern interrupts, right? Like certain breathing techniques, EFT, emotional freedom technique, right? Tapping, it's sometimes called. Self hugs, right? Peter Levine's work. Bilateral stimulation, so many tools, right? NLP tools and tools to kind of like, bust up anxiety and stuff like that. We also have to question, right? The perspectives that we have, the perceptions that we have, the lens at which we look at the world. And those are the things too. It's like we have certain beliefs, right? We have events that have happened. We have our interpretation of those events where we assign meaning to them and to ourselves. We start to create beliefs that become these stories that become our identities. And a lot of times when we're getting triggered, it's because some part of us feels threatened. Our identity is getting threatened. The way we view ourselves is getting threatened. Our view of the world is getting threatened. Your politics or your religion feels threatened, which is a belief structure, right? It's just your thoughts, your opinions, your beliefs. And when those things feel threatened, some people don't know what to do with that. So it's like, if you disagree with me, you're bad, you're wrong. And this is how you see people. That's why there's political violence, is that really dysregulated people who have no ability to like go like, okay, well, how is murdering somebody else going to solve this problem? And you see it all. I mean, talk about a world, right? Because there's all a country is a bunch of individuals, just like all a government is. It's a bunch of individuals. And when you talk about people who have no emotional regulation, and you think about some of the greats that have been murdered. When you look at Gandhi and you look at Martin Luther King Jr. and you look at Bobby Kennedy and you look at JFK, they kill these people, they murder these people because they're a threat to somebody else's ideology or somebody else's belief system, or they get threatened, right? Like, what do you mean? Why is he working on behalf of civil rights? Why are they talking about like, oh, like the real reality of the Constitution that all men are created equal? Oh, we're expected to actually act that way? All the white people get threatened, right? All the people get scared. Like, wait, what? You know? So what do? Panic. And we got to assert our authority and not control them. We can't have things change. So let's just like murder people. I don't believe in violence. I do not believe in violence. I can't stand it. I abhor it. Of course, that's not surprising. The kid of a murdered mother, right? We can talk about that another day. But I see so much that goes on in the world. When you just even think, what's really big right now online is a bunch of people doing what? Reaction videos. And even if those videos are quote unquote happy or healthy, or like, oh my God, listen to this person sing, or oh my God, like we love to react. And the media loves to get you to react. You got to be paying attention, because that's one of the things. When you start to slow down and check yourself before you wreck yourself. When you start to slow down and pay attention to you and how you're reacting in the world and how you're showing up and how you think and how kooky your own brain is, you start to see it around you. What a dysregulated nervous system America fucking is. I wish some more people would like do some yoga and take some deep breaths and find some pattern interrupts that work for them and do some hypnosis and calm their friggin' overactive amygdalas. You know what I mean? Because we have too much going on, and there's not enough gap between the emotions and the thoughts and the behaviors. There's not enough space to contemplate the consequences of the action. Do I want to be the kind of person who can't experience negative emotion? So if I'm going to feel a negative emotion, what? Then I have to yell or scream or hit you or push you down or bully you or do something extreme. We need to learn how to sit in the uncomfort, the discomfort. And that's the thing. A lot of us don't like to feel uncomfortable. A lot of us don't like to be in the uncertainty of things. We go into the what ifs and the worries and the worst case scenarios, right? We go all those W's. And we don't know how to be with ourselves and each other and our differences. And what's really, really fascinating is that when you actually talk to people, you find that we do actually have a lot of things in common. And I get it right now. And I've said it before, the world feels so divisive right now. It feels so insane. It feels so divided, left and right, and, Republicans and Democrats, the liberals and the conservatives and all this stuff. There is so much hate speech. I'm all for free speech, I think that you got to be crazy to think that you can have I believe 100% as a writer, as a speaker, I believe in free speech. It's one of the things I do love about this country. I just wish more people would not use their free speech to do hate speech. And a lot of people do some hate speech and call it something else. And it's a very confusing time to see a person say hateful things, and you have one group of people that's like, oh yeah, that's just being a good conservative. That's a man of God. And everybody else is like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is hate speech, right? This is what I'm talking about. The world feels like overwhelming and crazy. So those of us who are like paying attention and understand that there's a lot out there we can't change, but do understand there's a lot that we can change in here. And if we change enough in here and enough people change in here, I'm pointing at the self, that's how change out there ultimately happens. Is if we can learn what to do with our emotions and how to navigate these suckers, without reacting and then feeling the need to go out and cause harm to others. You know, we would have a different world. And there's so much fear. And really, for me, it comes down to all of this. There's a reason why I love A Course in Miracles and why it has helped me to make a lot of sense of the world. And when you come down to those basic tenets, you have but two emotions, two thought systems, love and fear. That's it. And so much of this world operates on fear. And then we wonder why people have such jacked up nervous systems, right? Have just dysregulated nervous systems and have emotional dysregulation. And so we want to be able to help ourselves. And by helping ourselves, and also if you're a parent, of course, or a teacher, an educator, or whatever, somebody works with kids, being able to have tools in your toolbox that also help children to do emotional regulation is like so fantastic and so important as well. Okay. So one of the things that happens though is if we don't have the ability to regulate our emotions, we go into what I would call like overstimulation or obsessive thinking, or sometimes we call it rumination, right? So this is just like, think of it like a loop, an obsessive thought, where you just keep, it's like a snake, as they say, a snake chasing its own tail. And you just keep thinking about a thing and thinking about a thing and thinking about a thing. And it's really a precarious situation. You know, it's just like people ruminate on it and they keep replaying. Like, let's say somebody at work said something unkind to you or mean to you. You see it at like, if you're driving in a car with somebody, I'll go back to the work example, but let's say you're driving in a car with somebody and somebody cuts you off. And you might have that initial reaction like, Jesus, right? Like they almost hit you, or they made you slam on your brake, or they weren't using their blinker, or whatever's happening. And let's just say there's somebody else in the car. And you might have an emotional reaction like, oh my God. But then it passes. It's like, okay, my heart was hammering there for a second. Now I'm calmed down or whatever. But the other person would be like, just keep talking about it and talking about it. Like, how dare they? Who do they think they are? Don't they see this? And if they went on and on, like let's say for like another half an hour, 45 minutes, and you'd be like, Jesus Christ, like that was a split second incident. It ended 10 miles ago. Like you're insisting on like driving this thing forward. There are just certain kinds of people, like they're like Velcro to a negative thought, right? They can't let it go. They just keep attaching it and holding on to it and holding on to it. And like, dude, like not helpful, right? So that's like an instant kind of like rumination. But we're talking, there are people who will replay a snub in their mind or replay a thing in their mind where they felt disrespected or they felt offended or they felt like this is like you're going against my religion, my whatever, right? And they ruminate on it and they obsess on it and they play it over and over and over again. And that kind of compulsive thinking where you cannot interrupt that pattern of thought, first of all, they're not trying to, because they're getting something from that. They're getting something from feeling victimized, not consciously, right? They don't often know that they're doing it. I'm not saying it's an excuse, but we often think about a time when you became obsessed about an ex or a situation or something didn't go your way and you just replay it, and we see it. Like I tell my clients all the time, it's like, and it's scientifically, quote unquote, proven. The science says that there's a chemical emotional wash that happens in your brain into your body. So like for anger, for example, Joe Dispenza talks about this. So do a lot of other neuroscientists, that it really only takes about 90 seconds. And I'm always generous and say 2 minutes. I'll give people like 2 minutes for a biochemical reaction of an emotion like anger to flush through your system. So you have the feeling, you feel it, you're like, right? Like you have the emotion, it comes up in your body, and whether it's in your gut or your heart or your throat or your shoulders get tense or whatever, your face, wherever you hold your anger and your rage or how it self-expresses. And biochemically, it flushes through you and then it's done. And we see it sometimes with crying too, right? If you ever you're upset about something, and I'm not talking like your loved one just died. I'm not talking about that, like kind of an extreme thing, but most everyday kind of like things, right? You get pissed, you get mad, or you're crying. and you cry and you're like, oh, big sobs, ugly cry, whatever. And then there's that moment when you go and you take that breath and you go, when you let it out, your nervous system starts to regulate. And then in your brain, you go, but then they did. And you just start playing it all over again. Like I can probably make myself cry if I make myself think about something really sad, like about an animal or like whatever, right? And it's like if we ruminate on it, it's just like we restart. We restart the biochemical wash. We restart the thing again and again and again. And if we don't recognize that we're doing it, a lot of times this is how we end up in a victim loop because we're not choosing to think something differently. We're not choosing to actively feel something differently. We're not choosing to change our story or change our mind, or shift our perspective out of fear to love. We sometimes don't actually want to feel better. We're getting something out of staying in that emotional dysregulation. Again, it's not always conscious. So we end up kind of in that loop. So there's a bunch of different things that you can do. I mean, even just the basics. The basics is, first of all, is like and I think it's in 12-step programs, they say, are you angry? I mean, are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you lonely? Are you, thirsty? Like these things. They ask like the basics of like your physical comfort, right? Take care of your physical needs, like getting good sleep, the quality of food. We know that the gut, the belly literally sends so much information up to the brain. So if you're eating nothing but shit food, right? And like even they say your gut biome, like your belly is like where so much serotonin is produced. So if the belly is off, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not staying hydrated, you're not getting good rest, you're not moving your body, you're not eating well, if you're not exercising, that right there just tips us in the wrong direction. So getting out, going for a walk, getting out in nature, getting some sun on your face or in your eyeballs or whatever, right? Breathe some air, move your body, go to bed at all these things we can do. Again, staying off of social media as much as you can, right? Stay connected to the people who love you. These are just like the basics things. And then also like engage in activities that give you a sense of purpose, that give you a sense of achievement, like where you feel connected, these positive things, where you feel connected, you feel committed, like again, these things that bring you joy. And whether that's finding your people, finding a group, finding an activity, starting a hobby, walking your dog, spending time with your pets. Like pets totally release so much oxytocin in us, right? That love chemical. It also gets produced in them when we're kind and we give them belly rubs and we pet them and we snuggle with them and we spend time with them. I mean, animals are like a saving grace for us in so many ways. And it's easier, right? It's often easier to change our thoughts than it is to change our feelings because a lot of times we're like, this is just how I feel. It's just how I feel. But we can start to question our feelings. We can question our thoughts. And that doesn't mean get rid of them, don't allow them, whatever. But really learning how to be with your feelings without feeling like you have to do something about it. We don't have to believe every thought we think. We don't have to go all in on crazy. We don't have to ruminate. We don't have to whatever. But if you don't know how to pattern interrupt yourself, and one of the fastest ways to do it, so you practice, Rick Hansen says this, Dr. Rick Hansen, we practice an emotional state until it becomes a neural trait, like in your brain. It becomes unconscious, subconscious. You do it enough times, like tying your shoes, brushing your teeth, driving your car. You practice a thing enough times, it becomes automated. So many of us are automated for anxiety, for depression, for meanness, for anger, for short temper, for lack of patience, right? We are deeply conditioned and wired to be particular ways. And what I'm saying is we can use that same thing, practice an emotional state until it becomes a neural trait. We can practice kindness. We can practice compassion. We can practice tolerance, mercy, forgiveness, goodness, right? We can practice love, the state of love. We can practice being who we want to be, less reactive, more patient, better listeners. Practice an emotional state until it becomes a neural trait. But again, we got to start with slowing down. One of the fastest ways that we can help our nervous system, one of the fastest ways we can shift our state is with a breath. And whether you practice simply breathing in through your nose fully and deeply, and then exhaling twice as long out through your mouth with a little bit of sound. And you probably can't hear this because my mic will dampen it, but just imagine like I'm making like a shh, like I'm whispering, when you go shh, tell somebody to quiet down, right? And just like you're breathing through a straw, like nice long exhale. It's one of the fastest ways. The physiological sigh is another good breath. When you breathe in through your nose, nice full inhale, and then you take a second little sip of air in on top of that, also through your nose. So it's like a double inhale, full inhale, and then a little fill up on top of that, and then twice as long exhale out through your mouth. It's one of the fastest ways to downregulate your nervous system. Of course, there's all those other tools, right? Tapping, bilateral stimulation, self hugs, like getting yourself out of a pattern of thought. Move your body. Sometimes I'll just get up out of my chair and do some jumping jacks. I'll get on the floor and do some sit-ups. It sounds silly, but when I'm trying to change an emotional state, dance, listen to music, take a whiff, right? I'm not a wicked big, I'm not picking on people. You know how some people are like really into essential oils and and they like make mixtures and they do all that stuff. I'm not one of those people, but there are certain scents that I can sense, like smells that I can smell that can really shift how I feel. And for some people, it's like calming lavender. For some of us, it's like smelling peppermint to liven yourself up, or lemon, or whatever the thing is. Like you got to figure out your own scent, right? Things that ground you or calm you. But really, it's just breaking that pattern of emotion, thought, action, reaction, right? It's like, no, 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 no. Can I find a little space here? How can I slow down? Why do I feel like I need to attack, defend, or prove? Right? Why do I immediately go into that reaction state? A lot of times, again, because it's patterned and conditioned. And if we don't know our own patterns and conditions, then you do not know yourself. And that's where I think so much of the problems in the world come from. And this is why, and I stand by it, I think the work that I do with people in the world, and it's not about me and making me special. It's like there are thousands of people who do the kind of work that I do all around, all across the world, helping people to know themselves and to find more freedom. And whether that's freedom from suffering, freedom from their anxiety, freedom from their patterns, freedom from their old stories, so much of it, the way that we think, the way that we interpret, the way that, like the prisons that we create for ourselves. And A Course in Miracles is a line that I love, and I'll maybe talk about this another time. And I'm paraphrasing, but it basically says, your chains have been loosened. The prison door is open. You can like get up and leave at any time. But we don't even know that we've put ourselves in a prison. We don't know that we're in these mental prisons of our thoughts and our stories and our beliefs. And are very limited. That's what a prison is. It's a small fucking cage that we are in. And we don't even know that the door is open. We don't even realize how much freedom is available to us. And the only people who go around feeling like they need to harm or maim or be like mean or murder people is people who have created prisons of hate. And the thing is when you have a prison inside of your own mind, you are also, you're not like, yeah, you're holding the key because you think that you're the jailer because everybody else is wrong and you're right, or whatever story you're telling yourself. But if you create a prison in your own head, you also have to, not only are you now in the prison, you're walking around with the keys because you're the prison guard. Now you got to guard this story. You got to keep this story alive or your prison falls apart. You're also the warden. You don't go home at night. You're in the prison. But you hold the key. And part of it is this emotional regulation. And so many people don't know what to do with their big feelings. We see it all over social media where people are just in the comments with their verbal diarrhea of negativity and attack and slander and making fun of other people and attacking personally, attacking people's looks and their body shapes. And like people are like out of their minds. And yeah, maybe some of it is bots, but mostly it's people who under anonymity just try to be so hateful. There's so much fear. And I don't know about you guys, but one of the reasons why I do this show is that it's one of the cheapest and it's the freest way, right? To get a little love, to get a little dose. of where I'm coming from, using spirituality and storytelling and stuff like that to spread spiritual principles, to spread a little more love in the world. But really, so much of what I do is to help people to have more freedom, freedom from suffering, freedom from shifting out of these old stories, these old patterns that keep us stuck in our old ways of being, keep us separate, keep us guilty, keep us in fear. And it's a block. That's what fear is. Fear is a block to love. We build these blocks and barriers to our own awareness of love's presence. This is what A Course in Miracles tells us, right? So much of this is about dissolving. It's not so much about solving it's about dissolving them. So I hope that this has been helpful to you in some way, and if this kind of work appeals to you and you want to work one-to-one, I call it the Quest. That's my 4-month one-to-one mentoring program. I love to work with people one-to-one. And if that's not, available to you, it's not in your budget or time or whatever, we also have the Nest, which is my spiritual group mentoring program and community, which is fantastic and amazing. It's $50 a month, and you come in and you get an incredible community and an opportunity to receive coaching, support, mentoring, to be seen, to be heard when you're navigating this whole being human experience, and all of it. All parts of you are welcome there. All parts of you. And locally, I teach yoga and do workshops and other stuff like that, right? Thai yoga, massage, whatever. So you can find it all at KarenKenney.com. If you want these podcasts delivered right to your inbox every Thursday morning, just sign up. Go to KarenKenney.com/sign up and you'll get those suckers delivered. And that's what I have for you today. Let's not turn our feelings into felonies, you guys. Let's get a grip. Let's get an understanding of what's going on inside of us so that we can make conscious choices that represent who we truly are, which is love. That's who we are, love. And our only gig is to spread that love, to get better at giving and receiving love. That's the gig, to be the love that you are. And when we're reacting all over the place and going into murder and mayhem, obviously, and it's not just like those are the extreme things. But again, to reiterate, we all in our own little ways each day murder and attack and go after and cause chaos in our own minds, right? It doesn't even mean you have to take action on it, but you're thinking things in your own head about yourself and others. That's not very loving. It's not very helpful. It's not good for your health. It's not good for the collective consciousness of the world, So if we can learn how to step out of our rumination and step out of that self-talk and if we find that gap, right, between the thought, the emotion, and the action, we can change the world. So I hope this has been helpful. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. And wherever you go, please leave yourself in the animals and the planet and the other people and the environments that you find yourself in better than how you found it. Wherever you go, may you and your energy, your presence, your love, your emotional regulation, may it be a blessing. Bye.